What's up, YouTube? Hey, hope everyone's having a great day so far, and welcome to another rendition of Juju's PowerPoints. Yeah, you know it's serious when I make a PowerPoint about this discussion. So today we're going to talk about understanding the factors that drive demand in Gods Unchained. I've been thinking about this topic for a while, and I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to talk about this because I've been collectibles for a while, particularly TCGs. I have positions in Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Pokemon. Oh my god, I'm blanking out, and a couple other ones. I've been playing TCGs for quite a while too. So this isn't my first cycle. The thing about Gods Unchained, it's even though it is play to earn and it's an NFT, inherently it's a TCG game, right? Because the NFTs are technically cards, and the cards are sold amongst players, investors, and all that stuff. So I wanted to make this video to possibly help other players slash investors or collectors to understand the market and to understand what makes a card good. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Before we go into the two factors that drive demand in Gods Unchained, I want to talk about what the market consists of in terms of who's in the market, right? Who makes up the market? So first up, we have our players. These are people that play the game, are serious about the game, will buy cards to empower their deck so that they can win more. These players are going to be pretty much the lifeblood of the game. And if you're free to play too, free to play is also a part of the market, right? There are people who, they're not going to particularly participate in buying cards, but free to play players actually earn cards as well, right? Because you can get Divine Order packs from the free to play weekend events, right? So you can sell those Divine Order cards on the marketplace to get Ethereum or whatever you want to call it. Cool. Or Gods tokens, depending on what you're selling for. The second group of people that make up the market is going to be collectors. All right, these are people who are in it for the long term. Maybe they have an attachment to a certain god or a certain class, so they'll be collecting those cards, or maybe they want to complete sets. These people are going to be in it for the long term, and usually when they collect, there's a sort of identity that they tie themselves to. Like, for example, people that collect Pokemon, right? Usually they'll collect a certain type of Pokemon. Maybe you're into evolutions, or maybe you're into Charizards, right? Same with Magic people who maybe you collect Planeswalkers, or even in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? What if you collect gadgets or all the Gate Guardians, or maybe all the dragons, Legend of Blue Eyes, God cards, all those stuff. So collectors also play a big part in the market in terms of what cards are, or what drives that demand for the market. Cool. And then last but not least, we have our investors and traders, right? These are people that are going to be, well, us, right? If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in investing and trading. These are people who drive the market as well, more so in terms of selling and buying. But all three of these demographics together, right? Players, collectors, investors, and traders. This forms a sort of ecosystem and a web that enables us to have a healthy market, or a marketplace within Gods Unchained. Cool. So moving on. The two important factors that drive demand in GU are going to be collectability and playability. So the reason why these two are important, and there is a third one. It's about how much money you can make off of these cards, but honestly, that just goes with understanding collectability and playability. Once we understand who comprises the market, these two factors make sense, because you have your players and you have your collectors, right? Investors and traders are more so going to be looking at these factors as well, because these are the main drivers. But these two factors are important to understand. So what is collectability? Collectability is essentially what makes a card fun to hold, right? Fun to have. Does this card make an intangible connection with the player base or with the player that is collecting those cards? And there are some factors that drive this collectability, right? Is this card popular? Is it an important character? Is it like a Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician type card? Is it a Charizard or Pikachu? These factors, this popularity definitely drives that collectability factor. Another factor is this card a part of a set or faction of other cards, right? Because just talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, is it part of the God cards? Maybe you're collecting God cards, or in Magic, what if you're collecting all the Planeswalkers, right? Or a certain set of Planeswalkers. It doesn't just have to be story related too. Going back to Magic, Strixhaven, like collecting all those Japanese alternate art Strixhaven cards, right? Or even in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you want to collect all the ghost rares. These factors drive, if it's a part of a set or subgroup, it also drives the collectability. Third factor is if it's cool, right? Some people just like cool things or cool cards, right? And cool is going to be subjective. Like, people's definition of cool will be different depending on the taste, but overall that plays a factor, right? If there's a market for having a card like that, and there are lots of different spectrums to understand. Like, maybe cool to some person is, what if it's a really cute card? Like, I know someone who's into collecting Jigglypuff cards, for example, right? So there are a lot of different ways. Of course, it's going to be subjective, but that's something you have to think about when thinking about the collectability of a card. And then next factor is, does it give a player or collector a form of player identity, right? Going back to Yu-Gi-Oh, when I was heavy into Yu-Gi-Oh, I was known as the Gravekeeper guy, right? Gravekeepers were my deck. I loved the deck so much, even if it wasn't the best deck or the strongest deck in the meta at certain points in the game. I would still play that deck because I thought it was super fun. I enjoyed the play style, and it gave me a sense of like player identity. It let me stand out in a field full of players, right? They would be like, oh, Juju's that Gravekeeper guy, right? Same with Hearthstone, for example. I mean, it's not like a collectible card game or anything like that, but players do have an identity. If you follow the Hearthstone esports scene, there's this player called Fibonacci. He was known for making the best Control Warrior decks. All the pro players would copy his deck list because he was that guy. Giving a player or collector a form of player identity will definitely stand out in driving that collectability factor, especially if that player is closely tied to that connection. And then the next thing you want to think about is scarcity, right? And scarcity, I mean, that's why all the diamond cards in Gods Unchained are at the price they are, because there aren't that many of them. Same with the mythic cards, they're one-ofs, So thinking about how scarcity affects that collectability factor will benefit you in the long run if you're looking to invest in Gods Unchained cards. So yeah, all these factors drive collectability. Overall, collectability is definitely an important thing to consider when buying cards in Gods Unchained. Thinking about all these things, I don't want to name specific cards, but in general, you want to think of these cards in that spectrum. Cool. Next up, we want to talk about playability. So playability is kind of like on the opposite side of the spectrum in terms of what cards drive demand, or what factors drive demand, right? Collectability is more like, I'm doing this for fun. I'm not thinking about the game. This is totally separate from the game itself, right? And then playability is directly related to the game. This is how useful these cards are. And determining playability, the main question to ask is this card good? And how do we reach that answer, right? Here are a couple questions you can ask. Is this card a key component of the deck, right? Is this card Apocalypse Now? Or is this card a Demogorgon? Or is this card, I don't know, your Exodia, right? Is this card a key component of the deck? That's going to be a good question to ask when determining playability of a card, because if a deck needs it, it's going to be needed by a player at some point in time. Next thing you want to talk about, the next question you want to ask is, does this card provide a good amount of value for its mana cost? And this goes with understanding stats and understanding the game. But for example, if you're able to discern how good a card is based on its mana cost, you can do a pretty good job in Gods Unchained, or making decisions about cards. Because if you're able to judge a card's strength correctly, that'll go a very long way, and it'll save you a lot of time and testing in terms of like, okay, is this card good? No, it's not good. All right, we'll move on to the next card. Like, you'll be able to look at a card right away and be like, oh, that's broken. And this takes some time, because there are a couple red herrings in the game that you'll see the card and you'll be like, you'll do a double take. But overall, if you really understand the game, like really understand the game, you have to be a top level player. This will give you a good amount of insight. Cool. But if you're not a top player level player, don't worry. Next question to ask, are there similar cards that do a better job? Perfect example is, what's a perfect example? Marshwalker, right? Marshwalker versus any 1 mana 2/2 card that isn't Viking Axewoman, right? Marshwalker is a 1 mana 1/4 with regen 1. It's really good compared to all the other cards in the set. So if you're looking at any other card that's a 1 mana cost card, you're always going to compare it to either a Marshwalker, or you can compare it to a Wild Boar or a Vanguard Axewoman, because that's the benchmark at that mana cost. If there are better cards that do a better job, Inferno, Apocalypse Now versus that 6 mana, that same spell, or the 6 mana spell in Death that removes all minions, but you have to pay like 8 life. Those are two cards that have similar effects, but one does a better job, clearly, right? And that's what you want to look at in the game. And next question you want to ask is, how does this card perform in the current metagame? That's definitely a factor you have to decide on, because of players that usually want to buy cards are usually going to want to be competitive. So understanding what's good right now and what decks are strong and what decks are weak are definitely going to be a factor. For example, Board Wipe Death and Control War are really, at the time of filming this, Board Wipe Death and Control War are very prominent in the metagame. Control War just went 25 and 25 in this week's weekend rank. And Board Wipe Death has pretty much been like a really popular topic on Reddit lately. So understanding that if a deck has is bad against Board Wipe Death and Control War, the value of those cards will probably go down, because demand is not there from players. And that could be possibly a buying opportunity, right? So think of it on the flip side. If a certain deck is down in the metagame because there are counters to it, if those counters get nerfed, that deck could rise in popularity again, right? So being able to discern, okay, well, is this deck, or are these cards a couple of nerfs / buffs away from getting better, right? Or from becoming a metagame contender? And if they are, those are probably good buy signals to invest in a card. Okay, so next up we have next question. Are there viable, powerful combos that incorporate this card? I'm just going to say it, Necronomics, right? The card Necronomics is a death card. If you haven't seen the 2 cards that I feel that are undervalued video. I don't say Necronomics in the video, but it is included in the video because it allows for a certain combo to happen. But that card allows for many combos within death decks, and it increases the value of any cards that are in that combo. If you've seen my Bombi OTK videos, I make a deck based around an OTK involving Necronomics, and it's busted, right? So that's something to think about when judging the value of a card. It's standalone factor, but you also want to judge how it interacts with other cards, and if there are certain combos that create some crazy effect that might be game breaking. And then last factor to think about, scarcity. I know I said this in the collectability slide, but scarcity actually counts twice. Yeah. The fact that cards aren't available to everyone means that if a card is a top level card, it'll be demanded by players, but also if it's a scarce card, like that makes it valuable to collectors too. So that scarcity factor will definitely play an effect, and that's why I think Genesis cards are probably going to do well later on. Okay, so if you can't do any of this, like if you don't have any understanding of Gods Unchained, that's completely fine. You can watch, shameless plug, you can watch the educational content on this channel, right? But you can also just look at what the top players are doing. Yeah, when in doubt, look at what whoever is on top of the ladder or whoever is on Twitch and is in Mythic rank and does really well. You can look at what they're doing and you can kind of like understand, okay, they're playing this card, this might be good, or vice versa, vice versa. Cool. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Hope y'all took something out of it. Yeah, and hope this helps you understand what makes a card good. I definitely want to keep making videos like this in terms of just helping out players, investors, collectors, all that stuff, in understanding the game and understanding the little nuances within the game, right? Because I feel like the better we become as players, collectors, investors, and people, the better the game and the community will thrive. And if we can get this game going, get this community thriving, we can possibly see another resurgence. This game could be the next Magic, in my opinion. But anyways, one disclaimer that I have to give always when I talk about videos like this is not financial advice. If you're looking for that, hire a professional. Do not listen to a guy on YouTube for sure. And if you liked the content, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it as well. It helps me out, it helps the channel out, and it helps us get seen on the algorithm. And if you have any thoughts, like share those thoughts in the comment section below, right? I love answering questions. I love interacting with my community. So if you have anything to say, well, be positive, okay? Be nice. But if you have anything to say, please go ahead and share that. Thank y'all again for tuning in, and see you next video.